First, you want to seam rip any pockets. Next, I'm cutting the sleeves about 3/4 of the way down the fabric, and I'm only cutting through one layer at a time, so I don't accidentally cut something I don't want to on the sleeves. And now I'm creating a baseline from the armpits that we're going to base all our measurements off of. Now make a mark 13 centimeters above from your baseline. Then draw a horizontal line at this mark you made. 18 centimeters below your baseline, you're going to make another marking to create the horizontal line that is the bottom. Next, create a marking 2 centimeters up from the baseline. And then you're going to create a diagonal line between your highest horizontal line and that 2 centimeter mark you just made. You're going to make a marking 10 centimeters down from the baseline and create another diagonal line from this marking all the way down to your lowest horizontal line. Next, cut your lowest horizontal line through both layers of the shirt. And make sure you keep this section for later on in the project. Do the same procedure with the top horizontal line. Now you want to cut the diagonal lines, but make sure you only cut through the front layer of the shirt. You can also cut off the button section and the matching holes for the buttons, because you'll be tying this section of the top together with a string. Now that section's done, we're going to iron out all the edges so it's easier to make channeling. You want to fold over each edge once and iron it, then fold it over again so that the inside has clean seams. This is just the way I like to do it, but you could also use another finishing stitch like a zigzag, and then you'd only fold it over once. Now we're going to sew down the channeling on top of all that ironing that we just did, except for at the very end of the triangle, because we need somewhere for the elastic to come out of. Next, prepare the elastic that's going into the channeling by getting 17 centimeters for the top bust, 34 centimeters for the top, and 60 centimeters for the bottom. The easiest way to get your elastic through your channeling is to get a bobby pin and stab it through the elastic until it's taut, and then you can push it through like an inchworm. Since the bobby pin's really thin, this can be much easier than like using a safety pin. So now I'm going to start by going through either side of the bottom bust and going all the way around to the other side, and then I'm going to sew down the ends so the elastic doesn't come out. Now I repeat this process with the top of the bust. Now to tie the bust section together, we're going to get a string that matches the color of our fabric and lay it down where we had ironed that double fold, and then you want to sew that double fold over with the string tucked inside. After you tie the two strings together, your shirt should be looking like this. Next, you're going to want to take that scrap piece of fabric that I told you guys to save earlier, and you're going to cut it the length you want your shirt. For example, I wanted mine to have a more cropped fit, so later on I cut this piece of fabric to 5.5 inches in length. You want this piece of fabric to be fitted to your waist. How I did this is by measuring my waist and dividing that by 4. Then, from the center line of the top, where the buttons are, I marked that measurement, which is where I'm going to cut. If you want the top to be tapered and go inwards at the waist, you can mark 1 inch from your original line inwards and 1 inch outwards from your original line. When you cut, it will be on a diagonal and have a more tapered fit. Then you will again repeat this process on the other side. Now, to connect these two pieces of fabric, you're going to put right sides together, so the sides that will be facing the outside when you're wearing it, and you can pin these down and sew it together. You can use a straight stitch, or if you want the edges to be clean, use some kind of finishing stitch like a zigzag. Next, you're going to press the seams and then finish the edges however you'd like. I'm doing the same double fold as we used before. Next, I'm going to attach 3 buttons onto my band. You could use eyelets or Velcro or some other form of attachment, but I'll be using buttons. And below, I'll link a detailed video on how to add buttons if you haven't done it before. Here I'm adding the matching buttonholes, and my sewing machine has a setting for that, but if you don't, I'd use tight zigzag stitches beside each other, and I'll also leave a video in the description box on how to do this as well. Next, I'm making a mark 3 centimeters from the middle. This is how far that we're going to attach the bra piece. So if you want the 2 cups held closer together, you want to make the mark less, like 1 centimeter. Now I'm pinning the band to the bra part, right sides together. And then we're going to sew this down to attach it. And you're going to sew all the way to the mark that you just made on the band. Since the elastic is all ruffled up, you might need to pull the bra piece while you're pinning and sewing so it reaches the line that you made on the band. Now work on the sleeves, and we're going to put right sides together of the sleeve and the edge of the bust that is left open and close it up. And we're going to do the same on the back side of the sleeve. And the closer you put the sleeve towards the center of the back, it's going to be tighter across your back. So you can measure this out with pins to see how it will fit first before you sew it down. Now we're going to work on the sleeves. On the shoulder pieces, you're going to iron down the edges twice like we did earlier to make the channels, because we're going to put an elastic through this shoulder section. Now get a 14 centimeter piece of elastic for each shoulder and push it through the channeling like you did before and sew the ends shut. Next, you're going to cut the sleeves to however long you would like them, and I made mine 13 inches. We're going to make an elastic casing around the sleeve, so we need to know how big it is. I measured mine and it is 18 inches. Next, we're going to cut out 2 strips of fabric, that is the length that you've measured, plus give an inch or 2 for some seam allowance, and the width doesn't really matter that much. Now you want to fold the edges once and iron it down. Now it's time to find the center of the sleeve, and once you do, mark it down and make a line all the way around, and this is where you're going to put the band, so it's just a good guideline for when you're sewing. And make sure the lines line up and go all the way around, so when you start sewing, your band doesn't start to shift way down your arm. Now I'm going to pin down our piece of fabric along the line we just drew, and then I'm going to sew down on both sides of the edges. When you're at the end, you want to fold down it so it covers up any rough edges. And also, when you're sewing along the sides, you want to leave a small gap so you can insert the elastic through later. Now I'm putting the elastic through the channeling, and when you make it to the other side around, you want to tie the 2 pieces of elastic together in a strong knot, and then you're going to stitch that opening closed. Now we're on the final step of the piece, which is hemming the sleeves, and I'm doing a double fold where it's showing on the outside. And then I'm going to iron that down and pin it and bring it over to the sewing machine to secure that fold down. And now the shirt is complete.